Hello students, the topic which I am going to explain today is about the nature and scope of Indian philosophy. Philosophy is an attempt to satisfy the reasonable desire for knowledge. It is not therefore a mere luxury but a necessity. So philosophy in its widest etymological sense means love of knowledge. It tries to know things that immediately and remotely concern man. It deals with the problems of this nature. As philosophy aims at knowledge of truth, it is termed in Indian literature as the vision of truth, which is known as darshan. Every Indian school holds in its own way that there can be a direct realization of truth. A man of realization becomes free. One who lacks it is entangled in the world. Indian philosophy denotes the philosophical speculation of all Indian thinkers, ancient or modern, Hindus or non-Hindus, theists or atheists. Indian philosophy is supposed by some to be synonymous with Hindu philosophy. This would be true if only the word Hindus were taken in the geographical sense of Indian. But if Hindu means the follower of a particular religious faith known as Hinduism, the supposition would be wrong and misleading. Even in the ancient writings of the Orthodox Hindu philosophers, which tries to present in one place the view of all schools of philosophy, we find in the list of philosophies, that is darshan, the view of atheists and materialists like the Charvak and the unorthodox thinkers like the Buddhas and the Jainas, along with those of the Hindu thinkers. So Indian philosophy is not a Hindu philosophy. Indian philosophy is marked by a striking breadth of outlook which only testifies to its unflinching devotion to the search for truth. Though there were many different schools and their views differed, sometimes very widely, yet each school took care to learn the view of all others and did not come to any conclusion before considering thoroughly what others had to say and how their points could be met. This spirit led to the formation of a method of philosophical discussion. A philosopher had first to state the views of his opponents before he formulated his own theory, and after that the refutation of the views followed. Last of all came the statement and proof of the philosopher's own position, which therefore was known as the subsequent views or the conclusion. The different schools of Indian philosophy discussed and weighed with all care, and any good works on the contemporary Western philosophy are discussed in the Indian system of philosophy. Besides, we find that indigenous scholars with a thorough training are able to deal even with abstruse problems of Western philosophy with surprising skill. One of the chief causes of the wealth and greatness of Indian philosophy in the past is that the openness of the mind, the willingness to listen to what others have to say, has a definite moral for the future. If Indian philosophy is once more to revive and continue its great career, it can do so only by taking into consideration the new ideas of life and reality from all sources. So, the Indian schools broadly divided into two classes, heterodox and orthodox. The schools of Indian philosophy have been divided into two classes on the basis of respect for the Vedas and otherwise. Heterodox, which is known as Nastika in Sanskrit, and orthodox, which is known as Astika in Sanskrit. In modern Indian language, Nastika and Astika generally means atheist and theist respectively. But in Sanskrit philosophical literature, Astika means one who believes in the authority of the Vedas or one who believes in life after death, while Nastika means the opposite of this. Now came how Indian philosophical system developed. The Indian philosophical system, though originating simultaneously, flourished together during many centuries and pursue parallel courses of growth due to the fact that in India, philosophy was a part of life. They lived the philosophy and handed it down to the succeeding generation of philosophers who were attracted to them through their lives and thought. The different system of thought thus continued to exist through unbroken chains of successful adherence for centuries. Even today, we find the active followers of some of the chief philosophical schools in different parts of India, though development of indigenous philosophy has been much retarded now owing to social and political vicissitudes. Each school criticizes and influences every other school that makes the different systems develop. They regard it as its duty to consider and satisfy all possible interpreted the sutras to justify their respective standpoints. Thus, there came into existence and arose many schools of the Vedanta. Commentaries on commentaries arose to justify, elaborate, or criticize existing doctrines. So, the philosophical literature of the orthodox schools developed in this way. The history of the development of the heterodox school is more or less the same. Now comes the common characters of Indian philosophical school. Despite the diversity of views, the Indian philosophy is characterized by a fundamental unity. The following are the common characters of the Indian philosophical system. Point 1. The practical motive present in all systems. All systems regard philosophy as a practical necessity and cultivate it in order to understand how life can be best led. Their aim is not merely the satisfaction of intellectual curiosity, but mainly an enlightened life led with foresight, and insight. But the presence of practical motives did not narrow the scopes of Indian philosophy to ethics and theology alone as some. Philosophy springs from spiritual disquiet at the existing order of things. The reason why the practical motives prevails in Indian philosophy lies in the fact that every system, pro-Vedic and anti-Vedic, is moved to speculation by a spiritual disquiet at the sight of the evils that cast a gloom over life in this world, and it wants to understand the source of these evils and incidentally the nature of the universe and the meaning of human life in order to find out some means for completely overcoming life miseries. Point number 3, the belief in an eternal moral order in the universe. The firm faith in an eternal moral order dominates the entire history of Indian philosophy, barring the solitary exception of the Charvak materialists. It is the common atmosphere of faith in which all these systems, Vedic and non-Vedic, theist and atheistic, moves and breed. Point number 4, the universe as the moral stage. To regard the universe as a moral stage is the general tendency where all living beings get the dress and the part that befit them and are to act well to deserve well in future. The body, the senses, and the motor organs that an individual gets and the environment in which he finds himself are the endowment of nature or God in accordance with the inviolable law of karma. Point number 5, ignorance is the cause of bondage and knowledge is necessary for liberation. All Indian thinkers held the common view that ignorance of reality is the cause of our bondage and sufferings, and liberation from this cannot be achieved without knowledge of reality. according to some Indian thinkers like the Jainas and the Bauddhas, the Sankhya and the Advaita Vedantins, liberation is the state of perfection. Liberation is the state of perfection and can be attained even in this life. Perfection and real happiness can therefore be realized even at least according to these chief Indian thinkers. Point number 6, continued meditation on truths learned is needed to remove deep-rooted false beliefs. According to the followers of the various philosophical systems, our habits of thought, speech and action have been shaped and colored by wrong beliefs, which in turn have been more and more strengthened by those habits. To replace these beliefs by correct ones, it is necessary to meditate on truth and think over their various implications for life. To instill right beliefs into our mind, we have to go through the same long and tedious process, though of a reverse kind, by which wrong beliefs were established in us. This requires a long intellectual concentration on the truth learned. Without prolonged meditation, the opposite belief cannot be removed, and the belief in these truths cannot be stated and established in life. Point number 7, self-control is needed to remove passions that obstruct concentrations and good conduct. Self-control is necessary for concentration of the mind on truths and for making them effective in life. Socrates used to say, virtue is knowledge. His followers pointed out that mere knowledge of what is right does not always lead to right action, because our actions are guided as much by reason as by blind animals' impulses. Unless these impulses are controlled, actions cannot fully follow the dictates of reason. So self-control implies the bringing of the lower self under the control of the higher. It does not kill the natural impulses but trains them to the yoke of reason. Point number 8, belief in the possibility of liberation is common to the system. Liberation is regarded as the highest good. The idea of liberation as the highest end of life is accepted by all Indian systems except the Charvak. The conception of liberation received, of course, slightly different meanings. All negatively agreed that the state of liberation is a total destruction of sufferings, which life in this world brings about. A few went a little beyond this to hold that liberation or the state of perfection is not simply negation of pain, but is a state of positive bliss. The Vedanta and Jaina thinkers belong to this latter group, and even some Bauddhas after Nyayakasas and Mimamsas.